Justin Arnold back here again with another episode of One Step Further. For those that are tuning in for the first time, we are a podcast where we take you things personally, professionally, spiritually, emotionally, on ways that we can just move your life a step further. We are a faith-based podcast. We have all kinds of guests on this. And one of those guests is Jason Hilton that I brought in. You may or may not know of him. He's going to introduce himself shortly. But he's just an incredible friend that I met last year. We've continued to build our relationship. He's got an incredible story. You're going to hear some of that. You're going to hear how he's dealt with during COVID and some of the new adventures in his life. So Jason, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell the world a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get this party rocking and rolling.
Yeah, so I'm Jason Hilton, and I was born and raised in Rochester, New York. I have a sordid, wide range of interests, past, future aspirations, and through it all have put my faith and belief and actually just my identity in Jesus Christ. So there's a lot to unwrap. When people ask me about myself, it's a little hard to narrow it down to a sentence.
No, of course not. I mean, one thing this guy is, I can tell you just from what I know about him, he's an amazing Christian, but he's also just an amazing family man. How many children? How many kids do you have, Jason? Why don't you tell us then?
So technically, I have two, Elijah and Ezra. Ezra is a girl. We added an H. It makes it more feminine. Elijah's 6 and Ezra is 2, going on 3. And then I help raise my nieces and nephews. And my nephew just went off to college. He's down in South Carolina playing basketball. And my niece, Nika, was my first love, my first little baby girl. And she just turned, 22. So, yeah.
What's crazy? Yeah, that's crazy. So I'm dealing with 11-year-olds, so I can't imagine. And of course, he's married to a wonderful, beautiful wife that he brags about constantly on Facebook. So, So why don't you tell a little bit about your story, like what he comes from a wrestling background. This guy was a professional wrestler. I'm sure, I know my wife's big into that, but I want to talk a little bit about that and how that's kind of led your life a little bit.
Yeah. It's funny because professional wrestling was just one of the many things that I've done in my life that it was really, it kind of came. So there's, it's a little hard to explain how it came about, but I actually was living in Jackson, Mississippi, and I ran into the son of Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and he was limping around. And it was kind of weird because in Jackson, you don't really get a lot of what we might call pretty boys, right? So he was tan and he was jacked and he had his T-shirt and his True Religion jeans on. And I thought, this dude's got to be somebody, right? He's in this town and he was on crutches. And so I said, hey, what happened? How'd you get on crutches? He said, I was wrestling around with a buddy of mine, and come to find out that buddy was Cody Rhodes. So Cody Rhodes now is the big AEW star, son of Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And so I said, I didn't know who his friend was at the time, right? He says, I was wrestling with my friend, and I said, well, that's what you get for messing around, And he goes, nah, a little different than that, the top rope. And I said, really, like local wrestling kind of thing? And he goes, a little bigger than that. And I said, really? He said, yeah, WWE. And I went, what? Who are you? He says, I'm Ted DiBiase Jr. I said, oh, wow. And so, Justin, the first thing that popped into my head was, I think I can kick this guy's butt. So if he can make it, and by the way, you can't tell from, me sitting here in the minivan, is that I'm 6'5", 250 pounds. And so, I'm looking at this guy, maybe 5'10", 5'11", out, and I'm
basically he's fighting me. He's fighting me. It sounds like.
Yeah. And so I was like, I think I can take this guy. So it started my interest back up. Now by the way, I'm 42 years old. So I was born in 78 and I lived through the 80s and even the 90s obviously I lived through, but of wrestling, right? I mean, if you were around in the 80s, pro wrestling was the thing. You know, your Hulk Hogan's, your $1 Million Man's, Macho Man. I mean, the list goes on and on. And many of those people, by the way, became believers, just so you know. Sting is a big believer. $1 Million Man, I met him later on in life and told him the story. And he signed an autograph for me and put a Bible verse. He's a big believer. He actually goes around and preaches the gospel. So awesome. Many of them became born again Christians. So anyway, so this love of wrestling kind of started sparking back in me. And so I started watching wrestling again. I got real deep into it. And then when I came back to Rochester, I started to see, I wondered if there was anything locally I can get involved with. I heard about a local wrestler, Brody Lee, who was in the WWE, now in the AEW, but, so I knew there was something here. And so I reached out and I found a school and I trained and I did it for about, I want to say about 4 years, professionally. And it was, it was fun. It's brutal. It's really brutal. And there's nothing like, just like as an example, one of the things that in real life, if somebody threw a punch at you, your first reaction is to put up your hands to block, to pull back, that kind of thing. But in wrestling, you have to retrain your mind and your body to do things that it would not normally do. For an example, when someone throws a punch, you're actually going to put yourself out there. So you're trying to put your face into that punch. So when you get it, you know what I mean? You can give that big, right? But you can't do that if you're back
there.
It's
entertainment at the end of the day.
Yeah, and like falling as an example. When you fall, you naturally want to put your hands down. But in pro wrestling, that's not how you do it, right? So there's a way to fall safely. There's a way to get hit safely. There's a way to take moves safely, give moves safely. And really, it really is for probably the first year is just learning how to be safe, not kill yourself and not kill somebody else because you could, or hurt them really, really bad. So it was cool. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about being on camera. I learned a lot about, quite frankly, I mean, think about this. There's only a few things in the world where you strip down to your underwear, right, and jump out in front of a crowd of people. And
perspective.
It's humbling, to say the least. And so anyways, I did that for a couple of years. Like I said, 4 years, maybe 5. I don't know. It was a good experience. I started when I was 37 years old. So, truth of the matter is I started in the indies, in the independents at a probably an age when most people are thinking about retiring or retiring from professional wrestling. And so I didn't have any illusions that I would go to the WWE or anything like that, but I really wanted the experience and I wanted to do it. So I pushed through and did it. And then I suffered a pretty bad injury. I dislocated my patella. Oh, wow. And I also had a neck injury, and it just became too overwhelming to be able to try to manage. I was laid up on the couch at my mother-in-law's house, right, for like 3 weeks. I mean, I just couldn't move, couldn't do much. And then it's like rehab and cortisone shots, and like it just became. Yeah. I didn't want to do that or put my family through that again,
You couldn't imagine. Yeah, my wife, she's a big fan of John Cena, like most.
I know.
But I remember I listened to a podcast and I wanted to look into this guy, just curiosity's sake, because I was like, well, she's into him. Like I was fascinated, and I used to be into it. Like the Hulk Hogan days, like who didn't love that? Like I had the characters and all that. But man, he's been through so many back injuries, so many injuries, like. And he does like a lot of things that people don't realize. He does a lot of Olympic lifting, things that would normally hurt him, but he's got a great coach. But it's just interesting to know that like they're out there and he's putting through so much pain, and what you talk about, like how common that is. Like people have criticized it, called it fake, but I was like, it's very much real, especially the injuries that you guys face and you guys have put in your lives on the line. So I applaud you that. You touched on faith a little bit and how a lot of people have, like, has faith always been a part of your life? And if not, or how did it lead you? Like, I'll give you a quick example of me. Like so many people that I've run into and that I'm friends with in church, it's been just their whole life. They brought up blah, blah, blah. I was brought up in a Catholic household, but I never believed. I never thought of anything. In fact, I went down a path of not believing and being atheist until I was saved and found God, which has led me ultimately, no joke, where I am. Even the one guy that led me to Christ is where I got through my mission trip that you know all about, and I've talked about on previous podcasts. But like my story is not growing up, like kind of growing up, but not believing in it till I made the choice by God ultimately is working in my life. So what's kind of like your story of faith? Like you touched on it and you talked about other people that have found it. So.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's probably, I think, the one, if I was to tell you about my entrepreneurial spirit, I started my first business at 15. I've been I ran events. I've done a lot, right? I worked in the stock market. I owned a comic book shop, a cereal bar, an event space that demands equality and inclusion. And I could talk to you about a lot of that stuff. But nothing is the same, right? It's all like stock market to a comic book shop and blah, blah, blah. But this has sort of been this one thing I've always had. So I was born, my mother was a drug addict. She was freebasing crack cocaine before it was crack. And so I was born to a mother with addiction and a lot of past history. And my father's a really good man. He had troubles dealing with his emotions, and I think that came from his past, and that led to a lot of abuse. There was some things that I'm sure he's not proud of, and we don't really talk about, but landed me in foster homes between my mother and my father. I was in, I think, 12 foster homes before I was 13 years old. And then I moved home full time with my dad. My sister and I moved home with my dad full time when I was 13, and we didn't go to another foster home from there. But in and out of foster care, and so anyways, as a young kid, I started to get debilitating anxiety attacks very early on in life. I remember my first one, probably about 6 years old, and they would lead me to just to start thinking about what death looked like and whatever. And so I would pray a lot, even at a very young age. And so 30 at this year now, I think it was. So I was probably at this, I'm 42. So let's say I was 10. I used to attend something called Bethel Express. And it was founded by a fantastic Christian, probably the greatest example of a Christian that I have in my life, Michael Peace. And Michael Peace was actually he's like an OG. He was the original Christian rapper. So he has a history. You can look him up, Wikipedia. He's amazing. And so he started Bethel Express and outreach to inner city kids, where he would come to pick us up and take us to like Sunday school and blah, blah, blah. And they also, by the way, I can't speak enough about Bethel Express and their program and Michael Peace. They have something like like 100% graduation rate for inner city kids who go through the program, who stay in Bethel Express throughout. And a lot of those kids go on to be lawyers and business owners and really doctors and from low income, impoverished inner city communities. So I was one of those kids. I was actually on the very first Bethel Express, like 32 years ago. And so I learned about Jesus, and they were really, really wonderful. And then things fell apart, right? So I got away from Christ. And I actually was a Muslim. I studied Islam for a while. I never was an atheist. I never not believed in God. I just didn't know really which one was right. But through it all, Jesus was always there. He never let go. He always was there. And I can see his footprints and his actions throughout those years. I got involved with drugs and alcohol. And I did a lot of stuff that I'm not proud of. Again, I think that all those tests are my testimony. I think all those things that I went through were for a reason. And I don't think that God put me through them, but I think that he helped me get through them. And he knows that he can use all things for his glory. So fast forward, I met my wife, and we had we were together, and we were going to have a son. And I asked my wife, I said, I think we should go to church. I think it's important that we do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to Bethel Church here in Rochester on East Avenue, downtown. Highly suggested. It's my home church. I love it. I love the people, and it's in the inner city, and it's a great mix of folks. And so, anyways, we went, and my wife was agnostic. And so she was apprehensive, to say the least, to go, but she loved me and knew it was important to me. So we went. And so we're in church, and I just remember her sitting there, with her arms crossed, and right. And it was really the worship music that got to her, because I saw her toe tapping, right, one week, and then the next week her legs are clapping, and then she's sitting up front, she's sitting forward, and then before you know, she's clapping, and then she's praising, and then she's on the worship team, right? And so
that's awesome. That's awesome.
It was so awesome to see her transformation. And I was there when she gave her life to Christ and was baptized. And I got baptized again, and we were all in. We gave our life to Christ, and through that there was still some complications, if you will, with drugs and alcohol and myself. And she did the best thing that anybody has ever done for me in my entire life. Is she went and she got our pastors, and she said, I've had enough of this. I love him, and we got to get this right. And so I still remember the day I was in my boxers, and I heard a knock at the door. Who is it? And I look out, and it's my pastors, and they're like, "Hey, bud, we got to talk to you." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, like, come on.
Yeah, you got me. And then so we talked, and my pastor said, you got to come in Monday, and we're going to, we got to sit down. We got to figure this thing out. And so he suggested Celebrate Recovery. It's a great program if anybody's interested or going through anything. It's all about hurts, habits, and hangups. So you don't have to be an alcoholic or a drug addict, because quite frankly, a lot of those things are just symptoms. Those things are not the problem, right? My problem is that I grew up in a messed up situation. I have iniquities that were put on me generations ago, on my mother and her mother before her. And these were things that my mother was an addict, her mother was an addict. And so we just, my father had issues being a good parent, because his father died, and he, so there was like a lot to unpack and uncover. And really, I think every single person on this planet can benefit from Celebrate Recovery. So I'm a big proponent of getting involved in Celebrate Recovery. So anyways, got involved with Celebrate Recovery. I got clean. I just celebrated 4 years this past, it's August. So August 19th, I think it was, 22nd, somewhere around there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then from there, I've been lucky enough to be able to preach. I've been able to teach. I've led Bible studies. I'm all in. Jesus has just done so much for me. God has done so much for me in my life, professionally, personally, and that's where I find my identity, and that's where I fall. And that's how that's me now.
That's awesome. See, this is why I'm grateful for technology, grateful for this podcast, because while I know Jason, I know a lot about him, I just learned so much, and I'm so grateful you're able to share that story, because I'm sure people can relate to it. Plus, just that was a great story, and just to hear how your wife was impacted by that. Plus, on a not so serious note, he talked about music twice during that, and I think that's cool too, because for those that don't really listen to Jesus music or Christian music, or call it what you will, I hear it all the time, it all sounds the same. And I always like to put it in front. I was like, then you haven't really been exposed, because if you really truly listen, there's so much variety in the same music you listen on, regular radio stations. You can listen, there's rappers, there's country, there's rock, there's all that in Christianity. You just need to find out what vibes with you. I mean, there's some really great artists, and we play a lot of that in a gym, and I'll have people like, what is this? I've never heard this. That's great. And then I let them know who it is. I let them know. So I sneak it in here sometimes too, but it's really cool. I thought that was cool. And on another thing that you talked about, you briefly talked about it, and you've talked to me about it. In fact, like one of the first times that we started chatting, and iniquities. I'd love for you to dive into that. I didn't even think about that till you mentioned. I was like, man, I think because it was kind of newer to me when you were talking about it, but it made sense. And I would love for you to touch on that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening, like when you mentioned that, like, what is he talking about? So do you mind touching on that a little bit and sharing?
Yeah. So you can tell, and you can look and without being judgmental, you can look and see sometimes, if you know people's history and you know their past, you can see these traits that we pick up from the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? These are an iniquity is essentially something that is I want to say it's like we all fall short of the kingdom, right, of the glory of God. And so we all have these things, right, that we just like, as an example for me, I'm like a 80% guy. I never go 100% on anything. And so that's where I fall short, like, because I don't commit to any one thing for too long. And why do I do that? Well, because, right, I think that people are going to abuse me or abandon me, or that I'm going to get, I have all these things I'm carrying from my past. So we all have these things, right? So, and some of them might be drugs and alcohol, whatever. So an iniquity essentially is something that was like, I don't want to sound crazy to the non-believers, right? Because it's essentially a curse, right? You have a curse that's you're generationally.
Well, I don't think it is just like anything else. How many times in my industry, in the health and wellness industry, for those who not listen, I own a training facility. I'm a health and wellness expert. So I hear they literally blame their genetics why they can't lose weight. And I don't think that's always the case. I think it's more on what you're talking about. That's more up here within our nervous system, within our mindset, within a lot of these things that you're going to touch on. So I don't think it's crazy. I think it just needs to be relatable. I think there's all these things that come with us. I mean, I'm seeing parts of my dad come out that I need to be conscious of. My dad's got a lot of positive, but he also has some negatives. We all do. Like you said, we all fall short. And I have to be conscious, or woke up in my mind, to not let those things fall into my children and things like that. And we've chatted about this. Yep. So go on. I just wanted to I want people trust me, you have to be a better father, mother, brother, sister, friend. You have to be conscious of your weaknesses and be aware of them, and understand that they might come from your past. Either way, which whatever. So you be aware of that and know that this is not going to be me, because I am going to impact my children and all those around me in a much better aspect. But if we don't acknowledge it, then we can't change it.
Right. Yeah. And you'll oftentimes see this you see this all the time. I'm sure you see a parent that makes unhealthy choices with their eating habits and their lack of exercise. And you'll see that their children do that. Or what you'll see is a complete opposite, that they'll make unhealthy choices on how they don't eat or how much exercise they do, because they don't want to be like dad. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or a parent or a kid that was abused, right, will then all of a sudden be a pushover or a punk to his kids, right? And they get everything, and then they have kids who are spoiled, right? Because they do you know what I mean? So. And essentially, again, this is a generational curse that was probably put on long before you knew your parents knew their parents, your grandparents, or even great-grandparents. This could go back literally hundreds of years, and it's something that's attached. That just, again, if we use something relatable, overweight grandparents, overweight parents, overweight kid. And so, I saw these things. I mean, this to me was an iniquity that I was carrying with me, that was put on me long before I was here. It was something that was built into me long before I knew who I was, or what kind of adult I would be, or what my children would be like. And I can even see some of those things starting to carry into my kids, And so, I mean, obviously being aware of what these things are and being able to deal with them in the physical realm is one thing, but you have to be aware of them in the spiritual realm, and you have to pray. You have to pray, period, right? So you have to pray, all right? I could tell you about the scientific reasons to pray, And I think that it's important that you understand that even if you aren't a believer, there are scientific reasons to pray. There has been scientific studies on prayer. And if you look up, there is actually this study, you can just Google it. This guy, the scientist, he put water into a jug and he wrote love on the jug, and they spoke kindness and love over this jug. And then in the bottle of water and another bottle of water, they wrote hate, and they spoke nasty, disgusting things over this bottle of water. And both of them on the outside looked like you and me. But on the inside, when they microscopically broke it down, the one that they spoke love over actually glowed. It lit up under a microscope. Mm-hmm. And the one under a microscope that said hate literally went black and turned disgusting under a microscope. So you don't see those things, right, with their natural eye, but they're happening. And prayer, when you speak love and joy and happiness and contentment, and like, you know, when you speak these things over, even my pastor tells us all the time, well, I have ADHD. Well, maybe you do scientifically, but speak it off. Don't keep speaking it into existence. I have it. No, yeah. I'm breaking it. I'm dealing with it, you know?
I think that's because like, that's this, like what the story we tell ourselves. We talked about this on the podcast before, but like the story that we continually tell ourselves, the story is what we become, just like the people we surround ourselves with. And you talked about energy, that's the water. It's the energy you put out to other things even around you. It's not just about you. It affects other things. And it just shows that like how connected we are to everything, and from Mother Earth to the water to the people around us. Like, well, we should all start, and you and I are very similar and like-minded. We should all start looking at all of us as just one, like underneath to us, God, and just imagine what we can accomplish at that. So sorry to pause you there, but I wanted to mention that. I think it's just incredible what you're talking about, but continue. You're saying some awesome.
So scientifically, you know, pray, right? I mean, you don't have to, pray to Jesus, please. But if you don't,
do
right,
it now.
At least pray because these words, these thoughts, this thing that you do will literally affect how you're. If you just look at it from that scientific perspective of water, we're 80% water, right? I mean, you probably know the exact 85% water, something like that. We're water.
Brain, muscle, and body are anywhere from 70 to 75 to even 80. Yeah. So yeah, we're water. Yeah.
So you're water. So speak love and joy over yourself. Speak it over your children, right? And break off those things that you have been told or you have been cursed with. I mean, you know, break them off because they exist, they're real, and they're and it's scientifically proven that, you know, just look inside yourself. Are you quick to anger? You know, are you quick to jealousy? Are you these things could be. Do you do drugs? Right? Did your parents do drugs? Did they make enough decisions? Talk to your parents about the things that their parents did and how they were raised. And you'll start to see this thing that, right? Because again, it might not be the drugs. It might be you do drugs because you have an anxiety about blah, blah, blah. You know, it could be any number of things. So iniquities are essentially these generational curses, and you have to find them, you have to figure them out, and you have to break them off.
Yeah.
And don't pass kids.
Wait, don't have kids?
Don't pass them. No, don't pass them to your kids.
Don't have kids. Definitely don't pass it. Cause like, you know, you touched on some things, and, you know, for me, like I come from, I'm not going to touch on all this, but like, I come from some very painful trauma from my past, and I got to be aware not to pass that on, because we see how some of these things can be generational, even the mindset. Like, you know, my parents did the best job they could, but it's even the words that they put in me. And it gave me initial like fear of money. It took me a while to even like have confidence in being an entrepreneur and be where I'm at today. But it was like one of those things where like, they just said they're master's degree educators, super intelligent, great teachers. But they were working 6 jobs between the two of them, always in debt, filing for bankruptcy twice. We never went on vacations because we couldn't afford it. And we didn't so like that was me. So for me, the way that was initially, like I was looked at money as evil for the early parts of my adulthood, to the point that, you know, I dedicated, you know, I didn't care about it, but I was just going to earn it to basically when I had kids that we're going on trips and vacation. You see that now living out, but that's how I turned into essentially a positive, was like, I mean, you see them in the mountains. It looks like every weekend, but we're going traveling just like and you touched on water. Like I'm a big Bruce Lee fan, so I got to mention it. When you start talking about water, flow, Bruce Lee, in fact, I'm wearing a bracelet that has one of his famous quotes. So I'll read it here because I think it's only appropriate what you're talking about. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. So for those, you can rewind and listen to that again, but I'm a big fan of that. I have ocean waves tattooed on my body because to me it's peace, and it's just one of those things, I look at life as one big energy, and I look at, to God, and I just look at it, all of it, flowing through, and there's bad moments and there's good moments and there's seasons and all these different things. And like, I look at the great moments, they're here. And as we've talked about before, you always be aware that the devil's doing push-ups in the parking lot, something that's right. Said, and I've used it to this day. And I always think of you when I say it, because it's so true. Like, but don't be mad, because just like I don't want to call it play. I don't know what you call it. Sorry, I'm not a stock market guy, but just like the stock market, what goes up must come down. But it's seasons. It's like, be grateful for the goodness, but know this is a learning experience when it comes down, just like water, when it crashes, that these are just moments in time. And that's what we're learning through COVID. So I think that's a perfect segue, maybe by accident, but so you're an entrepreneur, been doing it since you're 15, a long time. This guy's just got a heart of gold. Like he does his business not to make money, but to ultimately serve the public, and is grateful, correct me if I'm wrong, but grateful enough to earn money. At least that's what I see when I see Jason. He is just a good-hearted man. But talk about how COVID has affected you, what you've been able to do with it, and then we'll get into like kind of what you're doing now, because I think it's cool what you and your wife are doing now. So
yeah. So COVID has had a huge impact on us. It's been difficult. So we started what's called, we started a business called Pop Rock, in 2017. It was actually just a pop-up thing. We bought and sold, comic pop culture related stuff. And I really wanted to move into like a more permanent location for a number of reasons, maybe for another podcast. But we got a location. We decided it was always going to be like coffee and be like a cafe, comic book cafe kind of thing. So we'd sell comic books, sell toys. And we had TVs up. We showed cartoons from the 80s, the 90s, today. We were always playing awesome like Disney music and like really fun music, 80s, and just, it was really a beautiful, nostalgic place where people from every generation, from grandpa down to grandkids, came and just experienced this sort of joyous, what we kind of bottled it up as is Saturday morning, right? It was that when we were kids, that's Saturday morning every day of the week.
When I went in, that's the feel I got. So yeah.
Yeah. And so it was awesome, man. And so anyways, COVID had an effect on us because we were dealing with, it's not like we were a sit down restaurant or something, right? Where it's like, okay, our age group is 25 to 45, 50, people come in for a cocktail and a bite to eat. They sit down, they eat, they leave. That's a controlled environment, right? So our environment was get up, play, right? Run around. It was a cafe. You came in, you had your coffee, it was a cereal bar. So, you're eating cereal, you're watching cartoons, you're reading comic books. I mean, you're touching, you're playing. We had a Nintendo Switch where we're playing Mario Kart and all kinds of stuff. So you're playing the Nintendo, you're reading comic books, a lot of touching, right? A lot of kids playing, hey, how you do? My son, right, had 100 friends because friends. That's my friend. Because, you get to know other little kids and you share Pokemon cards, and it was one of those places, man. It was magical. But at the same time, when COVID hit, it was dangerous, right? I mean, we didn't understand it. We know that so our core values, we're a core value-based business. Every decision we make is based on our core values. And one of those is safety and fun. And so we couldn't be safe or fun if people had a high risk of getting sick and dying and or killing somebody. I mean, we didn't know enough about COVID at the time, and we closed down. We were actually, from what we know, the second business in Rochester to close. And so we did it early on. It was important to us because, again, our core values dictated that we needed to do it until we could figure out more. We got some PPP, we got some SBA, blah, blah, blah. And we decided that we could reopen in a limited capacity. We did some takeout, we had some fun, but unfortunately it just wasn't the same. There was too many factors working against us. And if we continued to stay open during this, we would essentially just burn through all of the money that we had. We'd break even, and we wouldn't be delivering on our mission and our core values because it wouldn't be fun. Walking up to the door and getting a bowl of cereal and sitting outside. It's not. There's no music. There's no cartoons. There's no video games. There's no other kid. You know what I mean? You got a mask. You can't talk to another kid. You can't get 6 feet. And so it just wasn't the same place. It wasn't. So we decided that we were going to stay closed permanently, if you will. Okay. Now, what we don't know from behind the scenes, and this is I don't know when this is going to air, but there were some things working before. I'm not going to get into great detail, but God already delivered us before all this happened. So it made our decision a little bit easier. So we had an opportunity to go into a different area, into a better place for us in our mission. And we're super excited to do that. And we know that God delivered that because it was before any of this stuff had happened. It was basically telling us before this stuff happened, I got you. So when all this stuff was happening, yeah, it sucked, but we always fell back on this thing that, well, God's got us. He's already got us. And so after we reopened and we were deciding whether or not to close, permanently for a while, I remember me and my wife, we were walking with the kids on the train tracks, and God just downloaded everything to me. He gave me the whole plan.
That's awesome.
Boom, 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 boom. And so I spoke it to my wife, and she said, yeah, we're going to close and we're going to do that. And the plan is simple. We're going to take our mission to bring childlike faith and joy out on the road. And so we started. So our next venture is going to be called Variant Cafe, and variant in nature is something that is rare, special, or different. In the comic book world, it's usually a sought after variant cover, 1 in 50, 1 in 100. It's worth more money. Everybody wants it. It's special. It's different. So the idea there is that we're creating a different, which, by the way, pop rock was very different, very special, and often and quite honestly imitated, right? So there were people who thought we were absolutely, yeah, thought we were absolutely. Say again.
I just said when something's great, somebody wants to imitate. I literally saw somebody trying to imitate the Nike symbol again, like as they could get away with it. When something stands out, and that's what people were doing to you. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And so, we knew we had something there. People laughed at us, and our neighbors, our community, in general, people just thought we were bananas. Which, by the way, my favorite quote of all time is the Unreasonable Man. And essentially that is the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable man persists that the world adapt to him. Therefore, any change is based on the unreasonable man. So we see ourselves as unreasonable people. We want to do things that change the world. We want to be change makers. We want to be the first. We want to shake it up. And so we did that. And so in saying that, our new venture, Variant Cafe, is something rare, different, and special. And you're going to see a really cool menu filled with tons of really awesome stuff. You're going to see something that the world has never seen before, but definitely has never been done in Rochester. And we're going to do it in a place that just complements the neighborhood, our neighbors, our community is going to complement us in a way that we think is just going to be really life-changing, but also change people's lives, not just ours, but others. And so we're grateful for that. So we have that. And we know that that's coming. So that's cool. So Variant Adventures is what the Lord sort of just said, this is what we got to do. So my wife already put down on paper years ago that her life, that what she wants is to be able to travel. We want to be able to travel with our children. I know that you have mixed children. I was raised in a mixed family. My first two that I told you, my niece and nephew, are both mixed. And my wife is Native American. She's legit Native American. She's Sac and Fox.
She's got the card and everything, literally, like she is, for those who are listening.
So I'm actually you're gonna get a little beep 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 there.
Your volume, yeah. So speak up. I can hear you. No, you just there you are.
We decided that I'm gonna try to move.
You're good. I can hear you good. For those that are listening, he is in a vehicle, and this is how we do it nowadays. So yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Yeah. Well, and I purposely wanted to be in the vehicle because this is where my life is right now. So we packed up our business, we packed up our house. We're technically homeless right now, and we set out on this adventure, this variant adventure. And the idea is that we go into these different towns, and we're actually filming. I just was on the phone with somebody who produced for Lifetime. Not to say we're going to be on there. I'm just throwing that name out there. But the idea is essentially it's kind of like a diners, drive-ins, and dives meets American Pickers. And so we're on the road. We're finding all these really crazy recipes, all these over-the-top, fun, amazing things that we can replicate and bring back to Rochester. We're learning about these areas of the world. Like, as an example, Maine is the #1 place where people get blueberries. I don't know if you know that, but most of the blueberries in the country come from Maine.
I'm a blueberry fan, so that's the one fact. You'll probably mention others, and I have no clue, and that's actually one thing I know.
Yeah, we're just going to learn, So we did the Northeast. First, we did New England, and we filmed some stuff there. And so we're going to these really cool kitschy places to eat. We're going to flea markets. We're going into people's houses. Safely because we are in this pandemic. So we have to navigate that, which if God told you to get in your car, give up your business and your home and go out into a world full of disease right now, right, of danger, you'd probably think that's a little crazy. And I did, but we're obedient. And so we're going out and we're being safe and we're listening. But the idea is essentially to go out, film this thing, to show the process. What is it like traveling with our 2 kids? What's it like being people of faith out in the world right now? And what cool stuff can we find and bring back to Rochester for when we open our space? So Variant Adventures has led us to New England. And as of Saturday, we're actually taking off and we're heading down east. My wife, we're going to Hershey, Pennsylvania. We're going to DC. We're going to Nashville. We're going to Atlanta. We're going across to Texas. We're going to, and then we're going to end up in San Diego for a little while, and we're going to film it all along the way. And we're going to try to do this thing. The biggest thing is that we're taking these experiences, we're taking these cool ideas and recipes, and finding rare, uncovering gems all over the country, and all in an effort to bring it back to Rochester to bless and build our community.
I think that's incredible. I think it's incredible what you're doing. I mean, I was going to ask you what you guys are up to, but you already shared it. I mean, hopefully those that are listening are just finding this incredible. And it just shows, like, even for those that are non-believers that are listening, like, same thing with me, put your trust. And that's kind of like what we did. I was going to take advantage of this situation. I saw a lot of people stressing out. I was like, you know what? That's where these adventures came. Me and my kids, we've always been hikers and adventurers, but we made it like our mission. It was during all this that to give you a little background on Justin real quick, like, I never knew if I'd be married, let alone if you met me in my 20s, I lived a kind of a wild lifestyle, maybe not quite like Jason, but it seems similar in nature. And
not like Jason.
No, not like Jason, but I had my time where I just looked at it like I didn't know if I had kids, but now, it was solidified during all this. I think I marinated on it, but I've literally written down on paper, my #1 job is dad, and everything else is just a vehicle to be better at that. And so I love what I'm hearing there. And I mean, you and I have similar values too. Like, I want to be able to do my career but not be away from my family and not negatively impact my family. And I think that's just amazing, where I look at life as balance. For me, it's 4 quadrants, and people might've heard this before, but the 3 main ones are faith, family, and fitness. And then we have finances, and keeping these things in balance, and I look at, like, faith being #1, and then family, and then fitness. But I look at it, when all these things are balanced, how everything complements each other and makes everything better. And then it goes back to that water quote, how everything just kind of flows. I I just love how you've been pouring out your heart here. And you mentioned a quote. I didn't want to pause you because you're on a roll there, but you talk about that Unreasonable Man quote in life. And I have a similar quote that's actually on my wall that Bruce Lee has said. And it's, do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Because I've always said this, and I impact my children with this. Like, we all wish, and I think we still see it. And a lot of people, like, maybe they're not consciously, but life is not rainbows and unicorns and sunshine as much as we'd like it. We can make it that by the world we create around us, but there's always going to be things. There's always going to be hell. There's always going to be difficulties and challenges. And that's why, like, you know, having the strength to endure and putting your faith in something bigger than yourself, what you and I both have, and putting your trust in something bigger than you to be able to just do exactly what you did. And one other thing I want to touch on, I think it's cool what you're talking about, but because I obviously haven't done quite what you're doing. I'm actually a little jealous, but it just shows, like, this is what makes America so cool is we think it's two sides, especially right now, but like there's varying cultures in America. And that's what makes it so amazing. Like when I was, we were hitting a peak a few weeks ago in Adirondacks, we were hitting Cascade, which is like 4,000 feet up. And during that, you just, at least me, with, of course, social distancing masks on, I'm going to talk to people like, why would you decide to do this when you could be laying in bed? Like, people do this. Why would you climb up when it's nice and sunny down here and then it's snowing up here and like 30 something degrees? And I met these people that were talking about Vermont, and they're not from there, but they go there regularly. And you're saying, you think you're in a different world. And we felt that way on the mountaintop, like how everybody up there, we could have all believed in different things, religions, politics, and everything else. But from a distance, of course, we all did this cool thing, an amazing thing, and how we're all to get along, and we're talking about it. And you're seeing just different people from Vermont, from all these states. And it's like, this is America, and this is what makes it cool. And I think that's cool that you're exploring it at such an interesting time. And I don't even know if you were thinking about that. Like, you're realizing how great we are because we're different, you know, and how different we truly are in each state and each region and everything like that. So I just think that's cool. And it just shows, like, these are things like, you know, again, that we always talk about on this podcast, like things that move your life a step further. It doesn't have to be monumental. It just has to be little things. And one thing that he talked about earlier, like if you didn't catch up on it, like, you know, just talking, like for those that are maybe new to your faith, you know, maybe it's just, you know, having that conversation and getting down on one knee. And if you're not like sure who you're talking to, just pour your heart out, or just talk like you would to anybody else. Anything else you'd like to share before we get off here, Jason? We share some amazing things. I feel we keep talking, but again, this podcast is one step further. Is any other nuggets, things you'd like to provide, talk about real quick that could move a person's life a step further in any way that God's calling you to right now?
I would say the biggest thing is try new things, right? Never take what other people say, right? And I mean that at a very high level. I remember when I started traveling outside the U.S., I lived all over the world. I lived in Greece, Italy, Spain, France, all over the place. I've lived all over the place, South Korea. And I remember every single time I travel or I tell someone I'm going to travel, there's always one person that tells you, oh, you be careful. They don't like Americans, or food, or to just try new things. Don't do anything that's going to be, I'm not telling you to try drugs, right? But
no,
but, and this could go to faith, right? Because, you know, here's what I would say. Do what feels right.
Your volume went out. You got cut off right at do what feels right. Do what feels right.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you got cut off at
okay.
What feels right is the last thing you said.
Yeah, just do what feels right. You know, one of the things that I would suggest as a Christian is look into your gifts. When you became a Christian, when you gave your life to Christ, you were given the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit came and resided in you, and God said that one greater than me will come. And also Jesus told us that we will do bigger and better things than he did on this earth. And remember that. Go out and do big. You can do bigger and better things than Jesus did. He told you that.
Preach, man.
Right? So you can get get that Holy Spirit. Learn what the Holy Spirit gives you. You are given gifts of the Holy Spirit. Learn what those gifts are and start getting out. Dude, I can be in great shape and I can't move my knee. There's people in wheelchairs that are jacked, right? Okay? Because they play to their strength. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? One of your things is working around those things, right? Mobility, not, learning how to work through and
I had a woman came in with a cane 6 weeks ago who's without that cane now. And people ask, how were you able to do that? Grace of God and just being guided.
Yeah.
Like it's cool. Like never set limitations, never set limits. And I love what you're saying. I think that's to try new things because you're continually doing it. I'm doing it like, navigating. I've always been an in-person and trying to navigate through those waters. This podcast was something new, and I've realized what it's provided a value into people's lives. And you talk about food. I'm a huge foodie. For people think that because I'm a nutritionist, which I am, I'm a certified nutritionist trainer. Like I'm eating chicken, broccoli, and rice. To the falsehood. And it's like, I've lived in different states and been around different cultures. And that's one thing I love about America too, like the variety of foods. And I always love trying foods. It's like you're missing out on so much if you're staying within the same circle, the same beliefs and the same thought processes of people. And you can grow so much in so many different ways, even your palate, if you just by trying food, you might find something you like.
And I just want to say that all doubles back to that, not wishing for an easy life, because all this stuff, it's nothing worthwhile comes easy. If you're let me say this, the easiest time in my life was when I was a drug addict and alcoholic. I made more money. I was with more women. I was doing stuff that men, hated me and wanted to be me. You know what I mean? And it was so easy. But guess what? That was the worst time of my life. Of course it was easy. The devil was chilling. He was happy. I was out there making poor choices, bad decisions. People wanted to be like me. I was setting a bad example for the people around me. Of course it was easy, right? Now I'm living a life that's dedicated to Christ. And not that I'm Paul, but I feel like him, man. You go into a town and they stone you. Look at Acts. Read Acts. They stone you. Do you know how many times they pulled one of these apostles out, or pulled one of these believers out of a town thinking they were dead because they stoned them? How many times they tried to put them in prison? How many times they tried to tear down their good name? Brother, that's my life. That's every day, it seems like. And that's because I'm doing what God wants me to do. And it's not easy, but it's so much more fulfilling. It's so much better.
I agree. Like same thing in my life that people don't know. Like I've been told that I've got great genetics. I've been told I got it easy. And like, it's just because these are things that I don't talk about. But a little teaser, I will be talking about all this stuff soon. Just give it a few months. But it's so true. Like you just got to have that mindset, like, that life comes in seasons and that you're meant for so much more. And when things are going good, there's always going to be something there, and I've noticed that in even my faith, like you talked about in the beginning stages, like those fireworks of joy is what I call them, the drinking, the sex, all these little moments that don't last very long, the new TV, the new car, but it's right back down. But you can find everlasting joy in faith in God. Heck, that's what I'm seeing in my kids. It's being instilled in them. And it's nothing been forced. It's just been introduced. And now they were sad that we were doing church digitally. We finally went to church for the first time 2 weeks ago, just me and my oldest daughter. We're like the Petri dishes, but I saw what my church is doing and they're doing incredible things. And mine's Northridge, by the way. We both go to great churches, but
great church. Northridge, great.
Yeah, again, it's just like if you're new to faith, just sit down, just pray, just talk to something, reach out to either Jason or I'm going to provide a bunch of links because this guy you want to follow on social media, especially with all his adventures. He's posting some cool stuff. If you're into comic books and all that stuff, he's going to some pretty cool places, some of the things that he's posting out there. But yeah, thanks for those that are tuning in. And again, we could talk all day here. I appreciate you, Jason. This has been a real pleasure. Like this is an hour. Normally these are wrapping up about 30, 40 minutes. So if you do like, share, subscribe onto this podcast, share it with people that can benefit, because again, we are listener supported. This is all free that we're just doing for you guys. And again, check out all our episodes. I think it's episode 20. And that's it. Anything else, Jason, before we get off here?
No, prayer requests. If anybody has any prayer requests, let us know, because man, there's nothing bigger or better than we can do than pray for you, and we'd love to. I know I would. So
I do. Yeah, I was asking about that months ago. So yeah, we're always here for that. Well, again, thanks for tuning in. Check us out on social media. Follow this guy, and we'll see you soon. Take care.